Every 4 years, the World Cup manages to produce a controversy that has absolutely nothing to do with the sport being played on the field, and the 2026 tournament, hosted across the United States, Canada, and Mexico, has already delivered one of the strangest examples yet. This time it wasn't a referee's call or a suspended player at the center of the storm. It was a hamburger box. Or more precisely, the absence of a logo on that box, on a ketchup bottle, on a stadium name, and on a pair of headphones worn by one of the tournament's biggest stars. What started as a routine trademark policy turned into one of the most talked about side stories of the entire World Cup, and once fans figured out what was actually happening, they did not let it go quietly. To understand why plain white food boxes and taped-over condiment bottles became a genuine cultural moment, you first have to understand what FIFA actually protects when it hosts a tournament this size. Official World Cup sponsorships are not cheap. Companies pay as much as $200 million for the right to be associated with the tournament, to put their logos on the pitchside boards, on player uniforms, and in official broadcasts. In exchange for that enormous investment, FIFA guarantees those sponsors exclusivity, meaning no competing brand is allowed to piggyback on the World Cup's visibility for free. This is called brand protection, and it's not new. Every World Cup has some version of it. What made 2026 different was the sheer scale of the enforcement and the almost comedic lengths FIFA went to in order to make sure it was airtight. The most visible casualties of this policy were the stadiums themselves. Some of the most recognizable venues in American sports had to disappear, at least in name, for the length of the tournament. Levi's Stadium in Santa Clara, home of the San Francisco 49ers and instantly recognizable to any football fan, had its massive logo covered by a plain white tarp and was rebranded for tournament purposes as the San Francisco Bay Area Stadium. Gillette Stadium in Foxborough went through an even more absurd transformation. Since the Gillette name and logo are printed on nearly every single one of its 65,000 seats, FIFA required workers to physically apply small strips of tape to each one, an enormous, labor-intensive undertaking just to erase a Razor brand's name from the eye line of every fan in the building. Lumen Field in Seattle became Seattle Stadium, with the technology company's name and branding stripped from the roof, the screens, the internal signage, and reportedly even the trash bins. MetLife Stadium turned into New York, New Jersey Stadium. AT&T Stadium in Arlington became simply Dallas Stadium, and Hard Rock Stadium in Miami was reduced to Miami Stadium. On paper, this was all standard operating procedure under FIFA's contracts with host cities. In practice, it meant some of the most famous names in American sports infrastructure vanished for a summer, replaced by generic, almost bureaucratic placeholders. If the stadium renaming felt strange, the crackdown inside the venues is what actually pushed the story into viral territory. Reporters and fans in press boxes and concession areas began noticing something odd about the condiments. Bottles of ketchup, mustard, soy sauce, and hot sauce, the exact items you'd expect to find next to any hot dog or hamburger stand, had been covered with thick black tape to obscure their brand names. The effort was so thorough that workers had even applied tape to the top half-inch of Tabasco bottles, a level of detail that struck many observers as almost absurd, given how small and unremarkable that particular label actually was. A journalist covering the tournament posted a photo of the anonymized bottles online, joking that they looked like evidence from a scandal rather than condiments at a sporting event, and the image spread quickly because it captured something fans found genuinely funny. A multi-billion-dollar global organization spending real time and labor to make sure nobody could identify a ketchup bottle. The chicken sandwich situation added another layer to the story, and arguably became the most talked-about single detail of the entire controversy. Inside stadium concession stands, fans looking to grab a quick bite between matches found themselves holding plain white boxes with no name, no logo, and no branding of any kind, containing a chicken sandwich that plenty of people immediately recognized by taste and format alone, even without the packaging confirming it. The chain in question isn't an official FIFA partner, so under the tournament's rules, its instantly recognizable branding simply wasn't allowed to appear anywhere near the stadium footprint, food packaging included. For a company whose entire visual identity is built around one specific, easily identified item, serving that same item in a box that revealed nothing at all felt almost like a riddle FIFA had accidentally created for its own fans. And it didn't take long for people inside the stadiums to start posting photos and video, asking, essentially, why they were holding a mystery sandwich they were fairly confident they already knew the answer to. What makes this entire episode so interesting isn't just that FIFA enforced its rules aggressively, it's that the enforcement backfired in almost exactly the way marketing professionals warn against. When Levi's found its own logo covered by a tarp outside its own namesake stadium, the company didn't get defensive or quiet about it. It leaned all the way in, pointing fans toward the tarp on social media and then rolling out a limited run of merchandise in stores across 7 countries featuring the covered logo design itself, turning FIFA's censorship into the product. One related video about the situation reportedly pulled in 9 million views on its own. Heinz took a similar approach, releasing a limited edition logo-free ketchup bottle that mirrored exactly what fans had seen taped over inside the stadiums, essentially selling the censorship back to the public as a collector's item. German footballer Jamal Musiala showed up to a match wearing headphones with the Beats logo covered in tape, and instead of letting that be a minor footnote, the company treated it like a teaser for a product launch. Generating exactly the kind of buzz an actual advertisement would have cost tens of millions of dollars to produce. Lumen, the company that lost naming rights to its own Seattle stadium, released a mock documentary featuring executives pretending to strip their own branding from the building, turning an inconvenience into a genuinely funny piece of self-aware marketing. The uncomfortable irony sitting underneath all of this is that FIFA's brand protection policy exists specifically to prevent non-sponsors from getting a marketing advantage out of the World Cup's massive audience. Instead, in case after case, that's exactly what happened. Brands that hadn't paid a cent for official sponsorship ended up generating more organic conversation and goodwill than some of the companies that spent hundreds of millions of dollars for the right to be seen. Trademark experts weighed in publicly on why FIFA was even able to demand this level of control in the first place, pointing out that hosting a match doesn't actually give an organization the legal right to stop ordinary people or businesses from using their own registered trademarks. Legal scholars specifically noted the doctrine of nominative fair use, which generally permits a business to reference its own product honestly, so long as it isn't falsely implying an official partnership with the tournament. In other words, there's a real argument that a stadium could have simply served a properly labeled soda or condiment without violating anyone's rights, and that the tape and tarps were less about legal necessity and more about the specific language written into FIFA's host city contracts, which go further than trademark law strictly requires. By the time the story had fully made its way around social media, the reaction from fans had shifted from confusion to open mockery of the policy itself. People joked that they'd attended the biggest sporting event on the planet and come away more entertained by a taped-over ketchup bottle than by some of the actual official sponsor activations they were supposed to be. Noticing. Others pointed out the strange contrast between FIFA's insistence on protecting brand exclusivity down to the smallest label and the fact that the tournament's most viral commercial moments all came from the brands FIFA was actively trying to hide. The mystery sandwich boxes, in particular, became a kind of inside joke among attendees, a shared understanding that everyone in line knew exactly what they were eating, logo or no logo, and that the absence of a name had somehow made the product more memorable rather than less. In the end, what this entire saga really reveals is something bigger than a squabble over stadium signage or condiment packaging. It's a snapshot of how difficult it has become for any organization, even one as large and powerful as FIFA, to fully control a message in an environment where every fan in the building is carrying a camera and an audience in their pocket. FIFA's rules were designed to protect the value of official sponsorship, and in a narrow, contractual sense, they did exactly what they were built to do. But value online doesn't only come from logo placement anymore. It comes from stories, from irony, from the kind of moment that makes people stop scrolling because something feels just a little bit ridiculous. FIFA taped over a ketchup bottle to protect an official partner's investment, and in doing so handed a handful of unofficial brands the kind of attention money simply can't buy. Whether that counts as a policy failure or just an unavoidable side effect of hosting a tournament in the most online, most camera-saturated country on Earth probably depends on who you ask. But either way, it's safe to say nobody expected the biggest food story of the 2026 World Cup to be about the food nobody was allowed to name.